Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Dude, I Love That. I'm Liv, and today we have probably the all-time favorite guest on the podcast ever, my former boss and very good friend, Christa Hardin, which you may or may not know from her incredible, what is it, top 100?
I haven't checked the charts today, but
That they do change every day. So I get
yes.
last time we checked, she was a top 100 podcast. So just no big deal. And she has an amazing Instagram account called Enneagram and Marriage. Podcast is the same name, but she's here with us again today, kicking off the careers series, which I'm really stoked about because so many of us are transitioning careers, or a lot of you guys are graduating from high school or college and getting ready to go into that side of things. And so perfect time to sit down with her and talk about how she's been able to balance being an incredible wife and mom while also starting this amazing online brand. So Christa, thank you for coming back on.
Wow, probably the nicest intro I've ever had. I love it. You are so awesome, Olivia, and energizing. And I'm just so grateful for our time today. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I know it's so funny because I talk to you pretty much every single day. I feel like we talk more now that we don't work together than when we did.
True. Because there's not that guilt of like, oh man, we better use our time productively. It's like, we're friends. This is awesome.
That's true. I did not think of it that way, but you make a really good point. But now she's got a different executive assistant who has also been on the podcast with her recently. And so we're just hanging out as friends, but we recently just did the Enneagram coach certification course that she put together. So if you guys are wanting to become a certified Enneagram coach, and especially if you want to work with couples, highly recommend checking it out because I just went through it and it was life-changing to say the very least. This is not a plug. She didn't ask me to do this. I'm just saying
Oh.
it's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you loved it. I know that of course there's many great programs, but you rocked it, Olivia. Like you went through it with flying colors. So I'm just plugging you right back to say you guys have a great coach, like full assurance that if any of you out there need a coach, she is an amazing person who cares very deeply and wants to make sure she uses all of her type 6 Enneagram amazing wisdom to pass on to others. So you guys are in good hands on the pod. And if she's your coach, I have full assurance. And I do not say that about a lot of people, do I?
Oh my gosh. No, you want to be reserved because you're a brand. You have to be careful who you put your name behind. But I think more than that, it's just like there are people for different things. And I'm not even doing relationship stuff, which I think is different because I work more with going to work more with the teen girls and young women. So I feel like that's even been a separate thing. And we've been able to like bounce things off of each other in that way as well, which has been amazing. And so I don't know how anyone does anything without people in their corner, which is kind of what we're also going to talk about today of getting feedback from people. But I want to talk about first this whole, I guess, broad spectrum is hustle culture. Why is that so difficult to say? Hustle culture. But I feel like in this world of social media, we're being pushed as women to become these like girl boss, burn out when you're 27 and just run you right into the ground people. And you have chosen a different path. You homeschool your kids. Like I said, you're able to balance being a mom, being a wife, and you started this business online while also having a local business. So can you talk about that balance and why you decided to put so much emphasis on being a wife and a mom? Because you've had opportunities come your way and you've had to let some of them go because the season you're in right now is more important to you. And that's something that just has really not been highlighted in this culture, which makes me sad.
Yeah. And I think that it's a great question because a lot of us do want to do it all. A lot of us have more passion than we realize. Like recently, I was able to get a book deal, as you know, and I'm so excited about that.
Is it public?
Ish. So it's fine to share here.
Yes.
It's totally fine. And I've shared it a little bit on my podcast too, but when I say that, I was laughing at myself because I was taking a walk the other day and then I was like, well, now you know you're going to have to like really try to get it toward the top of the charts. And I was like, why are you like this? So I was like laughing at myself at the same time because as much as I have the drive to be the best mom and wife, I also have the best drive to be the best out in the world. And I think a lot of people do want it all. And I think that as we examine the Proverbs 31 woman, we all want to be her. And some people get very jealous of her and they read about this woman who's, perfect, but I don't hear perfection. I hear a great goal for us. So if any of your listeners are familiar with her, she not only takes good care at home, but she's working really hard industriously. She's buying and selling in her fields and she's making sure to make good deals out there. And I'm like, she is shrewd. So she is my model. She is what I aim for. And I would like to say, sometimes I hit it, sometimes I don't, but I don't see perfection in her. I just see a hardworking woman who's healthy and balanced. So that's what I want to just say out there is like, no one does it perfect. But to start us off, at least on this important conversation, I have worked really hard to maintain the balance because there's nothing more important than your family, even if you are an ambitious woman like me.
Yeah. Yeah. And having that balance and that, um, like you were saying, template. That's something I don't understand how people can look at the Proverbs 31 woman and not see that it's nothing more than just like this is kind of like an everyday person, and
Mhm.
she's like out there doing the things that she's called to do, that she's
Mhm.
good at and that serve her family. She's not anything
Mhm. Mhm.
extraordinary. She's putting
Mhm.
what she has to good use, and she's using her brain, her heart, and everything together in order to serve her family well. And that's something
Mm.
that I feel like in everything you do, it always comes back to that. Like you're always choosing what you do wisely with the family in mind. And you've been able to strike this incredible balance. Was it difficult at any point for you of trying to figure out how much time could I devote to this digital thing, which frankly is a lot easier than a physical business because it's like when you have those chunks of time.
Yeah.
But how did
Mhm.
you decide, okay, now's the time to start this and like be able to section your time off between family and business?
Such a good question. I think a lot of your listeners are pre kids or have really littles, and it's busy, but it's a nice time to launch when you're in those seasons because you can build a great foundation. And I think that's what I did a lot of in those years. Is I got, even if it was 30 minutes a day, just knowing myself and what a passionate woman I am, I would continue to get educated on whatever topics. And then as I was able to launch out a bit more, when your kids are like little kid years, like say 5 through 10, those are golden years because they're pretty balanced and they're pretty easy and they don't want too much. They honestly don't. It's like after the crazy years and then before the teen crazy years. So, what was happening for me as I was transitioning from those middle years to these is I realized, okay, I was doing more of a local biz and I was also part time and really trying to make sure I was taking good care of my husband and kids and myself with self care. But then I realized that's not going to be possible once the kids need even more rides and they get even busier. And I wish somebody would have told me that the teen years are busier and that you don't want to miss them. Like you love your babies every bit as much as you did when they were in utero or out and babies. And now you love them even more because you've had even more time. So if they want you to be at their soccer game or at their volleyball practice, you don't want to miss. So now you have to work it again. And I think that's where digital came in. And it was actually pre COVID that I started doing the podcast and the Zoom sessions. So it worked out really nicely when the rest of my staff needed help with knowing what to do. I was like, God already had moved me to this before COVID. So that was really cool.
Yeah, talk about a blessing. I think the biggest part of your story is seeing his faithfulness, and I know we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I cannot even fathom the fact that like you had all this set up and then you just got to kind of walk right into it whereas everybody else was scrambling. And
Yeah.
because you have a like very good what is it called, foresight, where it's like you can see what's
Mhm.
coming and you're planning based on that and
Yeah.
following the leadings of the Lord. And he was calling you to pull back and do more Zoom sessions versus
Yeah.
at your local
Yes.
practice in Lakewood Ranch. And so at the time, I know you were kind of like, well, what? I mean, I like this, but like, what's going on? And then, it took about a year, and then we're like, oh, that's why.
Right. And I kept looking in my general area, like on my street, and my husband kept saying, wouldn't it be amazing if you could get your business at home? Like, and he meant in our town. And then I was able to say, honey, God was saying at home, not on our street. So it was really cool to get to that space together and to celebrate. We were there already. We were doing it. We knew how to do it well. So I felt like God was really faithful and I was leaning in. I do try to really lean in, listen, get on my hands and knees, go into prayer and journal and scribble things out and really make sure that my intentions are good and pure before I make decisions. Cause I wouldn't want me, my family, or any of my clients or listeners to ever be caught in a space where I wasn't being careful and thoughtful.
Yes. Yes. I don't know anyone who's ever met you that would say that you're not careful and thoughtful. If anything, you
Yeah.
are so thoughtful and caring. And that's something that
Aw.
has, we, as part of the essay, I'll give people backstory. As part of the essay for getting your coach certification through Krista's course, you had to do kind of like a case study and an example. And so um, her system is called the glow. And so it's about how like a married couple, throughout the years of being together, they kind of rub off on each other, more or less.
Mhm.
So mine, I did, it was supposed to be real or imagined. And I talked about Bolivia and Trista's glow because I think we had a work glow. And
Yeah,
the
we
one
did.
thing I always, the one thing I always learned from you was just like how you cared for people and how you put your things aside in order to be there and give your all for them. And that's just like the thoughtfulness and the care behind that transcends like everything that you do. It just like permeates it. And so that's something that has been like really special to see on many different avenues. And now this book is like just amazing and a culmination of so many things that you wanted to do. So seeing it from like
Oh
this
my
angle, it's like, wow, look how God's been working in her life. And if anyone out there is dealing with this season of like, what is going on? This totally blows. I feel like I'm in a quote unquote drought that's so like Christianese, but you know what I mean.
yeah.
If you're going through that, I hope this encourages you to look and see how sometimes we don't understand why we're going through what we're going through. And then, of
Mhm.
course, hindsight's 2020. You get back and you're like, no pun intended. You get back and you're like, oh wow, that's what he was setting me up for. And so, I want to actually touch on one of those things right now, which is originally you were a family systems therapist.
Mhm.
So this is like obviously you have your master's, you went through all this, and to get your master's and to do therapy, you have to go through a long period of time of, what is it? I'm totally blanking on the word, but you're like interning.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so you're obviously, I don't, are they usually paid? Because I think they're not paid.
No, they're not
Yeah.
paid.
This is the worst. Like you're
Yeah.
working for free and you're in
Yes.
school and doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so you work to get this degree, you work to become this family systems therapist. And then you switched to life coaching. And so
Mhm.
I know a lot of people they care and they want to express concern about things, but out of care. They're not doing it to be
Yeah.
rude. But sometimes it comes across like, "Oh, you're leaving this quote prestigious thing for this quote lesser thing." So
Right.
did you deal with any of that and how did you react?
I had met with a coach on my therapy team back years ago in Michigan. And I remember thinking that it was just an extenuation of therapy. So I had already met a life coach and I liked her. But then I had also seen coaches who didn't seem very skilled. And I felt like maybe they were, and I don't mean this rudely, but taking the term down a little. And I thought, oh geez, yeah, like you said, like I have had all this credentialing. And then I started to really pray about it, which we were talking about earlier today, you and I, how important that piece is. So I literally took a year of prayer before I fully made my decision on whether I would move. And one reason that I think that I was particularly moved in coaching is I am somebody who likes the linguistics of things. And in Florida, when I moved from marriage and family therapy from Michigan and also Illinois, and then into clinical psychology. When I came to Florida, as much as I like Florida in many ways, there was a term called the licensed mental health counselor. And that's great when you're working with mental health, but it became so far removed from marriage work and relationship coaching that it was like, terminology wise, like, what am I even doing calling myself a licensed mental health counselor? And so in the prayer time, I got a hold of American Association of Christian Counseling, and they had a coaching track. And I realized that calling myself a relationship coach actually better delineated what I did, and it didn't pathologize people. So it wasn't as much about prestige as it was about fine tuning what I did. And then come to find out I could work with people all over the country, the world, didn't have to give diagnoses. And I could leave those to other people on my team who actually have a heart for clinical. They love being called that because that's what their heart is to be that licensed clinical mental health worker type of person. So it was nice to be able to continue to work with people who did that. But it was also really nice to just fine tune and become a relationship coach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that even kind of speaks to like the fear that I think everybody goes through when they're fine tuning, because it can almost feel scary, like, if I do this, am I cutting myself off from this, or what are people going to think?
Yeah.
Because I feel like we care so much more about what people think now than ever before, because there's
Yeah.
more voices, there's like random
Yeah.
people following you on Instagram that are like
Yes.
chiming in, and you're like, get out of here, I don't know you.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it can be scary to make a move, even if it's the right move for you. I think it's really nice that you just laid out the fact that you realized that maybe this thing that I'm in, even though I've worked hard for it, maybe it's not the best term for me right now, or the best niche. And you looked at
Mhm.
that, and then you took time to pray, which is so important. And you've had
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to say how many times you've had to tell me, well, just pray about it. Even in the last month, it's been way too often. And I'm like, I should be like knowing this by now. But you, you took time to pray, and then you figured out your answer. And through prayer, and through just, I'm sure, talking with like your mentor, and being a thinking type, because if you don't know, she's a type 7.
Yeah.
So you're going through this, and you arrived at your place, and now look at you. You're in so much better of a position than you probably would have been if you'd continued just the mental health track, because like you said, you can't work with people outside the state. And
Right.
your time's taken up by paperwork and everything else. And it's like now
Right.
you're able to
Mm.
give everything to your clients. So what seemed like a quote demotion was
Mhm.
actually promoting you to be able to work with
I know.
tons more people and influence these amazing people all over the world, and pour into marriages and repair
Mhm.
relationships that might have been doomed otherwise.
Oh, thank you for just, yeah, that's just exactly what happened. It just really created where we didn't have to have the limits we didn't need to bridge and even theorize about what we were doing. And the APA, American Psychological Association, has a lot of great things, but they're very slow and cumbersome, and it's political. And so it was nice to be able to say, I can also just theorize out what works. I can notice between so many couples that I've worked with over 2 decades, like, this works and this doesn't, and this works with these personality types and this doesn't. And so it really was a lot faster, and is a lot faster than the clinical assessments I used to do, to now do the Enneagram instead. So that's been also a huge piece of the great blessed part of the work, is this system has become part of the family systems field, in my view, and maybe even the best part, because it really encompasses so many layers, as you know.
Yes. And how did you find out about the Enneagram in the first place, if you don't mind delving into that?
Well, I was following life coach Michael Hyatt, who is an older life coach who's got a lot of wisdom. He's a 3, and he really helps people with productivity and goal setting. And he had an Enneagram test. I took it, discovered I was a 7. But because I have so much clinical training and I used to do so many assessments in my psychologist days, I really didn't give it too much more attention. And then my therapist friend, who's a really deep type 4, she was visiting with her husband, and we were lounging at her poolside Marriott gorgeous hotel in Marco Island, Florida. And she's like, oh my gosh, you guys have to take the Enneagram. And I said, I did. What are you talking about? Like, what's so great about it? And she's like, it's really good for marriage. And just hearing that, knowing how couples struggle so much in relationships, I gave it a second look. And anyone who knows type 4s, they're so deep. It was so fun that she said that, because because of course she asked me to look deep. And then when I did, I've never looked away.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I kind of want to hit on what we were talking about before about trusting God, because literally the one thing that I feel like I really took away from working with you was there were some hairy situations. There were some weird
Yeah.
things that happened. There were some things that didn't work out that we thought were going to work out. But
Yeah.
no matter how sketchy it got, and I'd be like, Krista, like, well, what about, are we sure? And you'd be like, I'm just trusting God. We're just gonna, I'm like, he's got it, he's got it. And I would always be like, this is so counterintuitive to me, like as a six. I'm like, I want solutions, like I want to figure something out. But you
Mhm.
were always looking to him and you trusted him and you had peace. So obviously, most people aren't just born with it. And so they
Yeah.
have to work at it. So what got you to that point of being able to just be totally surrendered and have so much trust?
Well, one thing is not only do I trust God, I trust myself a lot. And I think that that helps a lot when you build trust with yourself through whether you're just a hard worker and you know it, or for me, I spent many miles running physically, and I would remind myself that I could get through anything. And um, just proving to myself that I had grit and tenacity through really hard jobs. I have just learned that I can do anything. And I would add to that anything through Christ who strengthens me. So I have no doubt that I can always survive basic level until God brings me home. And then, second of all, I also know that money is not the answer to life's problems. And that helps, and you need money and resources, but that you also really need to be balanced in, like we said, self care and family care if you want true survival. Because when we talk about what worked and what didn't, some of it was things that I would plan for us strategically, financially, that wouldn't work out. But I always knew that if I wanted to be out there doing a job that was just consistent pay, that it would be there. And I've had so many of those opportunities. And I mean, what is it? You're going to have a really nice car, but not like your life. That's so shallow. So I always said no to those jobs in favor of doing what I believe God was calling me to do, which was take it slower, take it more balanced, and do something that I love. And so that's what I've been doing. And I mean, from the time I had my first boyfriend, who was a multimillionaire, which I never really told you about,
No.
to then choosing my husband, who was no money at all, like that decision for starters, then doing clinical psychology, which was expensive and time consuming, against a boss who was a multimillionaire who said, please work for me and I'll buy you a house. And then I'm like, I'm supposed to help couples. Like, I've just had so many of those decisions my whole life, and I've had a very quality, good life, and we've always had enough money. So it's been fun to be able to say, okay, this or that financial goal didn't work out, but that's not really the end game.
I think that's where also is your trust in the dollar bill or whatever currency you have, or is your trust in the Lord? And you've always been able to come back around and say, I know that if the Lord took everything away today, there would still be something else there for me because he's good and he's going to show up for me. And
Mhm.
I mean, how much better does it get? You can just rest your head on the pillow at night, so free and so at peace because you know that that's there.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm hearing correctly from your story, part of the reason you have that is because he's taken you through the roller coaster of life in order to give you that trust in him. Because trust isn't just developed, out of nothing. It's developed through circumstances. It's developed through showing up to the hard things and continuing to stick it out and see what the end has in store. And
Mhm.
that's something that I think a lot of people don't want to deal with these days. They just kind of want the easy path, but you're not going to treat something the same way if you got it easy as if you actually had to work for it.
Exactly. Like, you take a lot more pride in your work when you're like, I built this. Like, this was hard and it took a lot of work, and there's no easy path that's really worthy if you have that love of the game. I know Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000-hour mark to make an expert.
Yeah. And part of it is just knowing what matters to you. And that one thing I think encompasses all of what we've talked about. It's like figuring out what's most important to you and going for that. This is something that I actually had talked with a previous guest, Cooper Chapman, about if you want to go back and listen to that episode. but it's like figuring out your values and what you stand for and your goals in life is literally going to cut out like 90% of your problems in terms of choosing,
Mm,
because you know
yeah.
where you're going. If it doesn't
Yeah.
like fit in this pattern, it's like, okay, well, it's not for me, and you just move on. And I think
Mhm.
that's why even as a 7, you're still able to have like all of this energy, even though you're outpouring day in
Yeah.
and day out to your
Yeah.
couples, to your family. You are so focused on what's for you that the things that aren't for you just kind of go by the wayside, because you're like, well, it's just not for me, and it's not meant to be because I'm in
Mhm.
this season or because I'm doing this project or whatever. And that's something we can all stand to look for in our lives, is like, what really isn't serving us, and
Mhm.
what can I bring in or take out that is going to get me to where God has me or where I want to be or whatever it is.
That's a good word, Olivia.
Oh,
Yes, I
thank you.
love that. So
Thank you.
cool.
And
Mhm.
on that, is there any piece of advice that you got, whether it's career advice or personal advice, that changed your life?
I think that being around people that were a lot older than me who could pour wisdom into me, they really helped me the most. And spending time with women who are much older than me, who had still their mental faculties to give me advice, has helped me so much and served me so well. And the main piece of advice that I got from two of them was so beautiful, Marie Little and Bertha Garfield. And Marie Little's husband was a famous author who wrote How to Give Away Your Faith, Paul Little. It was one of the first evangelical books, like along with Billy Graham. And so I was really, really blessed to get her as a mentor before she passed. And she and Bertha both told me, if you do your part, God will always show up to do his. And that is the best advice I've ever gotten, because so many people are like just waiting for God. And they said, wait, but work while you wait. And it was just like music to my ears. Like, get up, do the dishes, make your list, do what you can today. And if you need a little time to lament, take a little time to lament, but don't stay there all day. Work while you wait. Yes, take your cat nap, your micro nap, your date night, whatever it is that's going to soothe your soul. Make sure you're getting your fitness because you need your body to work to some degree. But really, don't forget God will show up while you're doing all that. And that's why you've seen me have this seemingly seamless life, is I'm still working while I'm waiting for God on the next thing. And it's been so cool because I used to be impatient, and now I'm always like, I have so much to do before I hear the next thing, and I'm learning that life is the journey. So it's been much more of a fun journey when I realize that, and I'm not just waiting for that vacation or that book deal. I'm like, that's going to come when it comes. And I've already turned away a lot of things because they weren't the right timing. And of course, this one's totally, like you said, cliche, but it's only for a season that you will get to have kids if that's in your heart. So you don't want to just work it away. And so you also want to pay attention to the kids' individual personalities and let that help you as well. Or you might have, like, I have a type 4 daughter who likes several hours a week of a date night with me or a date day. And it takes time that I could be working, but I know that she's only going to be 16 years old for a little while and she'll have a family of her own one day. So I don't want to say, I can't be with you for 2 or 3 hours every week for a date because I've got to be working for you. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So I give her that special time and I ask God to give it back to me if I feel like it's a particularly busy week. So I know that I've rolled in about 3 pieces of advice there.
No, that's good. That's like everything that you could touch on, which is like family, career, and just spiritual walk.
Thank
Man, the
you.
working while you wait, that's something that when we live in a world of instant gratification,
Yeah.
waiting has become a lost cause. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
no one knows how to wait anymore, and no one knows
Yeah.
how to wait well, which I
Yeah.
think is another
Ooh.
huge thing. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? It might have been Brittany Lutz, but I'm not totally sure.
Mhm.
Somebody did a post on waiting well and
Mhm.
what that looks like. And it was just like, that is so good. And you don't hear many people talking about it because it's not like the most
Yeah.
exciting thing, you know? They're like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't want to tell people that that's the truth. Like,
Yeah.
let me just make it pretty. But that is
Mhm.
pretty, because
Mhm.
you look at it and you go, I still have purpose while I'm waiting for this next thing,
Yeah.
women that are going through infertility,
Yeah.
you have purpose in this season. You're waiting for that gift.
Yeah.
And if you're waiting, like I've been going through this crazy thing with my career, I have been doing things that I don't want to do,
Yeah.
maybe jobs that I don't want to do
Yeah.
while I'm waiting. And the thing that I've been waiting for is here, but it doesn't mean that I just get to just jump ship on the things that I don't want and do the thing that I do want. And
Right.
so that is invaluable because you're always waiting for something in life.
Mhm.
You're never going to have it all. You're never going to be done waiting until we're in
Mhm.
heaven. But
Exactly. Good point.
you know, knowing how to wait and not be griping and like just kind of crappy about it, but
Yeah.
being willing to go through the waiting is essential. So I'm so glad you touched on that.
Mm.
And also asking God to give you time back when you've had to give it to other things. That's something that even you and I have been talking about with
Yes.
emotional drain, is
Yeah.
like asking the
Yeah.
Lord to give it back to you, having that time
Yes.
um to, deal with the things, but you get up and you move past it and you continue to wait or continue to do while you're waiting. And so
Mm.
um man,
Mhm.
that was literally like the best advice you could have given. I'm so glad.
Oh.
I'm so glad you touched
Oh.
on that. And then just to wrap it up really quick,
Yeah.
because I think, heading towards summer, people tend to get a little more relaxed, which, who can blame them, especially living in
Right.
Florida. I feel like we're kind of always like on a constant vacation.
Yeah.
But as a seven, and this is a little bit of a selfish question because as somebody with a seven wing, I deal with this, but how do you keep yourself on track throughout either, I don't know if you plan day by day, if you plan by week, by month, what are
Mm.
some tips you have for those of us who are more interested in going for the things that are fun instead of sticking to our plans?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I love to keep a flexible plan as much as possible too. So I get that side of life. And I think that as a woman, I've been really happy to see that. I think God made us to be a bit more flexible because we have uncertain times of the month and we have uncertainty, like I said, with children and what's that going to be like. And I already told you, you all have to expect something different. So I think that that is part of your wiring is to be creative and to let flow happen with God and to track your cycles. So part of what I do is I try to schedule out ideas during the parts of my cycle that are idea building and podcast recording during these times when I know that I'm going to have a brain that is better on projects the first couple weeks after my cycle. And then for the next couple weeks, I try to rest more. I do quieter workouts. But all in all, as far as planning and scheduling, I do plan but I try to keep it gentle. And I only work with clients who understand that I'm a mom and things might shift or that they can give grace. And that's something I can detect from our first conversations. And if they aren't that type of person, then I don't think we would be a good fit because that's a beautiful thing to try to work so hard that you would never ever break a commitment. But it's also very foolish because if somebody has a heart attack or you're sick, you have to be able to say, God's ways are higher than mine today, and we can't do this. Or, like you said, if it's a positive thing, and you know what, we had a session, we always meet every week at 5 o'clock, and I have this calendar, but you know what, my uncle's coming into town unexpectedly. Like, people need to give grace, or I'm having a baby. I remember having a baby, and one of my clients, I was actually so uncomfortable. And I said, might as well just do a phone session with you because I'm so uncomfortable, anyways. And she was so touched by it. And we still have talked about it to this day, many years later, that she was like, I'll never forget that you were doing a session while almost in labor. But I'm like, hey, it worked. So it can have both effects, like where you have to cancel or you get to add something back in if your clients and you know that life happens. So if you can have a job that has some built-in flexibility and you know you're a hard worker, that's what goes hand in hand. And then you can give yourself little breaks. So I usually always have a daily workout so that I know that's a fun break. And then we always come together at the end of the night as a family and enjoy dinner or watching our favorite programs together, taking walks. So I always have things built into the day to make, like you said, to allow myself to relax and have fun.
Oh, that is so fun to have your little like rewards, I think we like
Cute.
miss out the fact that we kind of are built on like a reward system. And so
Yeah.
having like I would never have a workout as part of
Part of
my
your reward.
reward. No. Oh my gosh. But you're like, I get to do this once I'm done with
Yeah.
this, and then I get to do that. And like, I think you just perform better and you're more
Mhm.
focused on the tasks that you maybe don't want to do, or the tasks that require more mental energy when you do have those things to look forward to. So that's always super fun. And this has been an amazing episode. I'm so glad that you had time to come back on. And
You.
I mean, I know I was so encouraged and blessed by this episode. So hopefully you listening were encouraged and blessed as well. And if you want more of Christa and her, dare I say, genius, be
Aw.
sure be sure and check out her podcast, Enneagram and Marriage. You can find it on basically every platform. And you can also follow along on Instagram. She is at Enneagram and Marriage, and you can keep up with her there. She's got lots of, my favorite's Fun Friday. I'm just saying, the memes are untouchable. They're so good. And there's always at least five that you can like hysterically laugh to. So, anyways, thank you so much for listening to this episode or watching if you're on YouTube or Spotify.
Yes.
Be sure to keep up with this podcast on Instagram at Dude I Love That Podcast. See you next time. Bye.